In the past, I've talked about my network and how I've set it up, and I've previously used pfSense with dd-wrt to set up my network and make some access points using dd-wrt while pfSense was the firewall. I wanted to redo my network a while back. I was having some issues and I was wanting to make some VLANs and do a few different things, and I was just having a hard time with it. So I thought, let me try a little experiment, and I went and I bought some TP-Link hardware that goes with an all-in-one kind of system called Omada. So if you've heard of Unify and their Ubiquity stuff, it's the same kind of thing, or Ubiquity and their Unify stuff is the same kind of thing, where it's really that single pane of glass view of your network. So I thought, let me try out Omada. It's a little bit less expensive. It's, still kind of prosumer aimed, and I saw a few different people do videos on it. It looked interesting. So I bought the router, a managed switch, and 3 hotspots that go with it that actually become wall plates that are PoE powered, so they're pretty nice. And I've been running that for a couple of months as part of this experiment, and I was really hoping that it would work out because I like the control panel, I like the way that the software functions, I like the way that they've got things set up. It's a little bit hard to dig around occasionally at first, but once you figure things out, it's not too bad. But really, I've just had nothing but issues. My wife has had nothing but issues with it. And just occasionally the Wi-Fi just drops out 2 or 3, 4 times a day, and I'm in online meetings all day. So it's important to me to have something that I can depend on. And right now I don't feel like I can depend on their system. And what's weird is their system is based on OpenWRT under the covers, as far as I know. So it's odd that they seem to have some issues, but of course they're modifying it heavily and things like that. So my thought was, let me redo my network. And I'm going to set up this machine, which I had before. This is the HP that I bought, and if you look at it, I've actually got 5 NICs on it. So I've got this one over here, right here, and then I've got these 4 here. So that gives me 5 gigabit ports to work with. And I'm going to put OpenWRT on this thing, on the x86 version, and we'll go through how to get that set up together. I've got this that I had previously. And I had tried it out, also a TP-Link product, but not part of their Omada stuff, but it did a mesh Wi-Fi network. I just didn't like how it worked. It wasn't that fast. It just, I don't know, just me personally didn't like it, but it's got 2 ports on it. It's pretty nice. It's actually a nice little piece of hardware. It does also AC wireless, which is pretty fast, so that's pretty cool. So I'm going to set one of these up, I think, but I think in the end I'm going to put OpenWRT on this. And this has the PoE port in the back that helps it get through the house, and then 3 ports on the bottom, 2 of which are gigabit ports, and this third one is a PoE out plus gigabit port. And then it also does AC Wi-Fi and Wi-Fi 6. So this is pretty nice, and I'm excited to try that with this one. So we'll go through setting these up, but the thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to set up these pieces of hardware, and then we're going to set up some VLANs, and we're going to push that out through the house, and I'm going to set up some Wi-Fi networks with those VLANs and put my different devices on them. So I'm going to go through a few things. One, how to set up OpenWRT on an x86 appliance. So it's not all just there in the x86 build. You have to kind of go through and get it set up. So I'll go through what that looks like. The next part is how to set up OpenWRT on this appliance as my main firewall, kind of my main router, to have the VLANs that I want, the firewall rules that we need, and everything like that. And then we'll go through setting up an access point as well, so that we can set it up to have those VLANs, set up the ports that we want, and then set up the Wi-Fi networks that are going to go off of that associated to those VLANs. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to get into it right after this. I want to say thank you to all of my subscribers and all of my patrons over at Patreon. Seriously, you guys make this so worth it for me to do these videos every week. I really truly enjoy it, and I just can't say thank you enough. If you're enjoying these videos, subscribe. Let YouTube know that I'm doing a good job by subscribing to the channel. Plus, you'll get notified when I have new videos coming out. And finally, if you're enjoying what I'm doing, give it a like. Just click on that thumbs up, and that way YouTube knows that you like it, and they'll pass it along to other people that might enjoy my content as well. I really appreciate it. Thank you again. Let's get started. Alright, so for the first part, we're going to install the x86 version of OpenWRT on this machine that I showed you, this HP machine. So what I've done is I've set up Ventoy on my system, and I've got up the boot loading screen here. So I'm just going to load into my USB 3 that's plugged into the back of that device. Now I'm just recording the screen with my iPhone, and we've got Ventoy, so I'm just going to go down until I find Linux Mint. I'm going to press enter, enter, And one more time just to tell it to boot into the live CD mode. You don't have to use Linux Mint specifically, but in this case I'm just using something that I think will load up pretty fast and be pretty easy to use on this older machine. So we're going to boot into this live CD, and once we get into that environment, we're going to do a few things to download the OpenWRT firmware for x86. It's pretty straightforward. I'll have links in the show notes to help you get to the pages where you can look for the most recent version, because if you're finding this later on, months down the road or years down the road after I've done this, for sure the version will have updated and you'll want to get an updated version of it, but it'll make it better for you than me just directly linking to a version that you may not want. So once this is up and running, we need to have an internet connection. Either you need the internet connection to be live, or you need the ability to get the OpenWRT firmware onto this machine somehow through another USB if possible. Something like that is also an option. But in this case, we're just going to go and open up Firefox here, click into here, and we'll just search for OpenWRT x86 download. Generally going to be this top option here. Now what you'll find is it brings you to the wiki, and from the wiki you want to jump into the correct download page. So here on the wiki where it says go here, we're going to click on that. It's going to take us to the downloads section. Now here you see all the versions. You want to go down and get one of the most recent versions. I was advised to go ahead and get the RC candidate of 2305, so I think that's what we'll do. So I'm going to click on this version. Once you get here, you want to go to targets. You want to scroll down till you get to x86, which is down here almost to the bottom. Then you want to go into the 64 folder if you have a 64-bit machine. And from here we want to get the right version, so we want to get the combined EFI image in my case. So I'm just going to click on this version right here. It should download pretty quickly, which it did. We can close out our browser now, and we're going to open up the terminal, and we're going to CD into the downloads folder. That's where it's downloaded by default, and if we do an ls we can see that file. So we're going to do g-unzip OpenWRT and then just hit tab. It'll finish it out. Let that unzip. We should get an OK message here, which we did. And now if we do an ls, we'll see we just have the image file. So now we need to copy that to our internal drive. So we need to figure out what our internal drive is. So in Linux, to do this, we're going to become root real quick. So we're going to do sudo su. Since this is a live CD, it doesn't ask me for a sudo password. I'll clear out the screen, and I'm going to do ls-blk. So this says show me all of the block devices inside the system, and what I'm looking for is the one that actually has my stuff on it. Here on SDB I can see that this is my Linux Mint. I don't want to use SDB, so I want to use SDA, and that's this one right here, and I can see that it's a 16 gigabyte drive, which is correct. So now that I know which drive I want to use, I'm just going to clear this out, and we'll do dd for the command, if, which means input file, equals, and we're going to do OpenWRT. We're going to do BS, which is byte size, and equals 1 capital M for 1 megabyte, or buffer size, sorry. And then we're going to do OF, which is output file, equals /dev/SDA. So that says, take this image that I just downloaded and extracted, using 1 megabyte buffer, put it onto the internal storage drive that I have on this machine. So I'm just going to hit enter. This is very small, so it won't take very long. And it's finished. So that took about 4 seconds. It didn't take very long at all. If you did this with something like Mac OS, it would probably take about 20 to 45 minutes depending on the machine. So it's just definitely a different thing depending on what you're trying to use DD for, but in this case it's very fast. So that's now installed on this machine. So I can do reboot, and that's going to take us out of the Linux Mint version there. It'll come up and tell me to pull my flash drive, which I'll do. And then I'm going to hit enter to continue the reboot. And I want it to reboot off the hard drive, so no need to use any special keys. And this is going to boot up into OpenWRT, and it boots pretty fast, but right now there is no web user interface. So OpenWRT has two interfaces. It has the command line interface, which is UCI, and then it has the web interface, which is LUCI, and they call it LUCI. So until we go and install it, it's not going to have the web user interface. Right now, it's also not going to really know much about the ports that are set up on it or anything like that, so we're going to have to go do that as well. But you might be lucky and get one that does. So I'm just going to hit enter to get past this, and I'm going to do Control L to clear out the terminal there. And I'm just going to try a command here, opackage update, and this is probably going to fail because it doesn't know how to get to the internet. So you're going to see a few lines where it says failed. There it is, it's failing. So we're going to let it fail. And then I've got some commands that I'm going to run to set up the network interface the first time, and then we should be set. All right, we're going to use a few commands to set this up. So again, I'll clear out the interface, and we're going to do UCI. So remember, that's our command line tool. UCI set network.lan. So I'm going to tell it local area network IPADDR equals. And I want to set that to something that's useful on my local network so I can get access to the internet. So I'm going to set it to 192. I better hit my number lock here, 192.168.10.251. Now you should pick an address that you know is not in use on your local network. I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to do UCI set network.lan.gateway equals 192.168.10.1, and then UCI, let me make sure I do this right, set network.lan.dns. So we're going to give it some DNS, and we're just going to use Cloudflare 1.1.1.1 and enter. And then we're going to tell it to commit those changes. So we're going to say UCI network, or actually commit network, and then we're going to reboot. So after it reboots, it should come up and have access to the internet, and we'll test that once it does. All right, it's rebooted, so I'm just going to hit enter, and I'm going to clear out the interface there, and we'll do the OPKG update again. And this time there, it looks like it's getting some packages pulled down, which is great. That's what we want. Once it's got all the packages pulled down, we want to use the package manager to install LUCI. So we're going to do OPKG install LUCI. It's going to go grab it. It's going to tell us it's done, which is great. And then we're going to start up the HTTP server that it needs to run that web interface. So we're going to do /etc/init.d, so init.d /uhttpd, and then start with a space before it. Should be done. And I'll give it one more reboot for good measure. And when we come back, we'll be on the web user interface. Alright, on my previous setup, I had everything kind of ready and I messed up, so I went back and reset this router. So right now I'm working with the normal 192.168.1.1 IP address, but just keep in mind you can set that at any point during the process. Once you've got LUCI up, it's really easy. I did want to talk about a couple of things just to cover. When you first come into it, it's not going to have a password set, and you can go to System and then Administration. And right here, you'll just put in the password you want twice and then save. I've already done that. Now, also under System, and I'm going to enlarge this a little bit for you guys on your mobile devices. Under System and then System again. You'll want to go in and change the name of the router. So I'm going to change this to main router, and it needs to be a host name. It can't just be like with spaces and stuff. You have to use characters that are allowed in a host name. And then again, you can just call it main router. You can put in whatever description you want. If it makes more sense for something, especially a larger implementation, you may need to have something a little bit better. And then notes, you could put in any kind of location or anything like that that helps you find the router if you need to. And then finally, the time zone. So I'm in America, Chicago. You might want to go ahead and set that time zone. Hit save and apply. So in OpenWRT, when you hit save and apply, that actually is what causes the changes to be applied in the system. On some of the screens we're about to go to here for the interfaces, you'll see that when we're doing editing, when we're doing any kind of adding of new interfaces or adding of devices here in the devices tab or any configuration, it'll have a save button on the dialogues that we're using, and we can make a bunch of changes and save those, but until we click this save and apply finally, they won't be applied, which means you don't get yourself locked out in the middle of the process. And I clicked save and apply by accident when I was recording this previously, and I locked myself out. That's why I had to go back and reset the router. So once you've got things up and ready, we're actually going to come to the interfaces and then the interfaces tab here. And you'll see I've got a few things going. So one, I've got the WAN interface, and they've just kind of auto set this to be ETH1, so the port ETH1. If I look here, the ETH0 is set as the LAN port. So right now I am connected to that one and I'm getting LAN, but I want to switch those. So I want to make it so that this one is actually in my LAN bridge. That's in my LAN bridge now is the WAN, and this one that's here for the WAN is actually in my LAN bridge. And I want to add the other ports. So if you recall, this device that I'm using has one port separate and then 4 ports together on a card. And I want those 4 ports together to actually be in my bridge. And a bridge just means you're taking physical ports and connecting them together with the software to make them do the same thing, essentially. Now we'll change those to be different VLANs in the end, but for now we're just going to bridge them together, and we're going to go ahead and change this. So the first thing we're going to do, I'm just going to open this up and edit for the WAN. I'm going to go right here to devices, and you see it says ETH1. I'm just going to uncheck ETH1, and I'm going to click on ETH0 to change that, and I'm going to click save. So remember, when you click save, it just sets it to be applied. It's not being applied yet. I'm going to do the same thing for WAN 6. I'm going to click edit. I'm going to go here and check ETH0 instead of ETH1. And I'm going to click save. So now for this device here where we're creating the bridge, I'm going to go to the devices tab, and here where it says VLAN, I'm going to go over here to the right and click on configure. And I'm going to go here where it says bridge ports. So I'm going to drop that down, and you can see I can select multiple ports. So I'm going to unselect ETH0, and instead I'm going to select ETH1, 2, 3, and 4. Now remember, this says WAN and WAN 6, but we're changing that. We just haven't applied those changes yet. Once I do that, I'm going to also put on bring up empty bridge, which is fine. It means nothing's plugged in, but I want to bring up the bridge anyways. And then there's some VLAN filtering we're going to get to in just a minute, but first I'm just going to save those changes because I've made that bridge, and I'm going to save and apply. Now, because I made those changes to which one is the LAN ports, I need to take out my cable, and I need to move it to one of those LAN ports in the back of the actual machine. Now that should kick in my LAN. That'll give me the IP address or the ability to do this that I was doing a while ago, and they're refreshed on the user interface, which is great. That means everything is functioning the way we want it to. And if we look here now, we have those 4 LAN ports. So we've got ETH1, ETH2, ETH3, and ETH4. And then down here we've got ETH0 and ETH0. So that's what I'm wanting for the setup. If it doesn't matter to you, it's fine as long as you know which port does what. That's great. But now I've got those 4 ports together in a bridge, which is what I want. That makes it a little bit easier for me to remember where things are at and what they're doing. Now that we've done that setup, it's time for us to get into creating our VLANs and setting up our VLAN filters. So when we start talking about VLANs, I do want to say, if you can wrap your head around the concept of what a VLAN is when you're talking about OpenWRT or dd-wrt or many of the other systems that are out there, even pfSense and OpenSense, the LAN that is there by default, this LAN bridge, is actually a VLAN, and it's just a default VLAN that they set up automatically for you. That's happens to be VLAN 1. It's tagged with ID 1, and it's defaulted so that everything can see that traffic, and really that's the way that it works. So what we're going to do is say, I don't want to use the default VLAN anymore. I want to create my own VLANs, and I want to have the system use that. So we're actually going to create 4 different VLANs. Now that we've got that concept out of the way, we're going to get rid of this .1 VLAN, and we're going to create some new VLANs. So we're going to go to the Devices tab again, and we're going to go to this BRLAN bridge, and we're going to click on Configure. So here we've already bridged our 4 ports, okay? Those are set and bridged. And we're going to go over here to Bridge LAN Filtering. So this is where you kind of create these DSA filters. So we're going to click on Enable VLAN Filtering, and then we're going to add 4 VLANs. And I'm going to rename these. Instead of 1, I want it to be 10. So you'll notice it just automatically assigns the ID starting at 1 and increases each time you add 1. That's fine. So I've got 10, 20, 30, and 40. I don't need to give those a name or anything yet. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I want 10 to be untagged on ETH1. So I know which port that is. I'm currently plugged into ETH4. So I'm going to untag this on ETH1. And then on VLAN 20, I'm going to untag it on ETH2. And on VLAN 30, I'm going to untag it on ETH3. And then over here on this VLAN 4, this is going to be tagged, all tagged. So that's where I'm currently connected. So I'll have to move my connection in a minute and I'll explain why. But I'm going to put these all as tagged. So what this is going to do is on VLAN 4. So think of this as one port in the back of my device. That's what it is. This is going to be my trunk port that's going to send out all of my VLAN IDs to my other devices on the network that can detect VLAN IDs. So these are tagged VLANs. It's going to carry the tagged traffic. Here I'm saying, hey, on this port, I want it to be untagged so that you can get, by plugging in, this ID or whatever network will be associated to this particular thing. On this port 2, I want you to get the network that's associated to this one. And then on port 3, the networks that's associated to this one. So port 4 is always going to be all the tagged traffic. I don't really have one to associate to the 40 network, but that's okay. I'm just looking to associate this with a few different ones. If you only have 2 ports, set them all as tagged on one port and then set whichever one you want as untagged on the other port. And you should be able to plug into that untagged port and still get an IP address and still reach your device, your OpenWRT device. That's all we're saying is on this port, I want to be able to reach my OpenWRT device on whatever network I associate to this tag. So here I'm saying this is going to be tagged traffic. If I tried to plug into this port like a computer, it's not going to get anything because my computer doesn't know how to read tagged traffic. Here, it's untagged. That's why my computer can read it and it can go, oh, okay, I see what you want me to grab. This is the untagged port. These are saying I'm not a member. I don't participate in this. So that's why we're leaving it like that. Okay. So for each port, I'm saying I want one of these networks to be untagged. I could say all of them are untagged on port, for the first VLAN. And then just uncheck this. There we go. No member. So I could do this and just say, I want these all to be untagged. So no matter which port I plug into other than port 4, I'm going to be a part of this network every time. I'm just kind of mixing it up to kind of let you see what it can do. So I'm going to say not a member here, and I'm going to untag it again here. And then I'm going to say not a member here, and I'm going to untag it, here, right here. So untagged. So all I'm saying is this port will send all of my tag traffic down the line to other devices. This port is where I can plug in and get connected to this network through a wired connection. Let's just do save. We're not going to save and apply yet. We're going to go over here and we're going to actually edit this because we want to change this so that we can get the right traffic through here. So I'm going to edit this and I'm going to change it to BR10. So it's going to say BRLAN 10. So I'm going to scroll up a little bit. So if you see when I drop this down, let me try again and make it longer. There we go. So we've got our different VLANs. So right now it's just set as LAN. That's that 192.168.1.1. I don't want that anymore. I want my LAN to be VLAN 10. So I'm going to click that one. Here I'm going to adjust my IP address. I could leave it exactly as it is. You do not have to do this, but I just like to make my IP subnet match my VLAN ID because it makes it easier for me to remember like what am I connected to and why. So I'm going to make this 10. And then right here, I'm also going to make this 10. And then over here, I don't think there's anything else we need to do. The firewall settings are already set. We're just going to leave that zone. And the DHCP server, now if you want to adjust how many addresses your DHCP server will hand out to your different devices, you can do that. Now this is my main LAN, so I expect there to be more devices on it. So I'm going to start at 11 and I'm going to stop at 175. That should be a lot of devices, and I'm going to hit save. So I've adjusted this and you'll see that it shows, hey, it's got pending changes. That's why it's not showing like normal. Now before I move on, I'm going to go ahead and add an interface and I'm going to call this media because that's my next VLAN. You can call this media VLAN. maybe underscore VLAN, there we go. You can call this VLAN 20, you can call this whatever you want. This is just a name. I'm going to know it as media, so that's what I'm going to call it. It's going to be a static address. It's not going to be a DHCP client. And then I'm going to go down here and I'm going to pick VLAN 20 because that's what I want for my media. I'm going to click on create the interface, and then it's going to bring me to this same looking page. So I'm going to just give this an IP address of 192.168.20.1 because again, I want this to match my VLAN. I want my subnet to match my VLAN. So that's going to be the IP address. If I'm connected to the media VLAN, this is how I would get a hold of this router, connect to it. On the net mask, I'm going to pick 255.255.255.0. And then down here on the gateway, I'm not going to put anything in right now. I'm just going to leave it blank. Okay. Up here on the firewall settings, for now, I'm going to pick the LAN firewall. We'll go through firewall after a while and change it up, but for now I'm going to pick the LAN firewall. DHCP server, I do want this to be a DHCP server, so I'm going to click this button, set up DHCP server. And then again, I want to say what my range should be. So for media, I've probably got 15 devices total on my network. So I'm going to set this as 11, and then 25 would be the last one. So this should hand out 192.168.20.11 through 192.168.20.25, and that's it. The rest are there for me to use as static addresses if I want to. There's nothing else here for me to really change. I'm just going to click on save. And you'll see now I have my media VLAN set and ready when I do my save and apply. So I'm going to do the same thing for the other two networks that I just did. So we'll go through it one more time just to help you kind of keep up. If you want to skip ahead, you can if you already remember. But the next one is going to be work. I'm going to tell it static address. I'm going to go here and pick 30. That's my work VLAN is 30. I'm going to hit create. So I'm going to go down here and give it an IP address in the 30 subnet. So 192.168.30.1. My net mask is going to be 255.255.255.0. And then I'm not going to put anything here for the gateway. I'm going to go up here to the firewall, and I'm going to go here, and you'll see it has LAN and media now because it's showing me both things that are in that zone. So I'm putting everything in the same zone right now. We're going to change this later so that we can separate out our networks and things a little bit. But for now, I'm going to put this one in the same zone. So I just click on the LAN and media, and then DHCP server. I want this to be a DHCP server machine, so I'm going to click on the button. And again, for my work machines, it's probably 11 or 12 machines total, so I'm just going to say .11 through .25 again for this one, so it's not that many machines, and then I'm going to hit save. I'm going to hit save and apply, and then I'm going to move my Ethernet cord to the number 1 ETH1 spot on the back of my router so that I can still get an IP address. So I'm going to hit save and apply, and it's going to tell me, hey, you're about to do something that's going to change how you access the OpenWRT interface. Are you sure you want to do this? And you have a few options. So one is cancel. I don't want to do this. I didn't mean to click that button yet. 2 is apply with revert after connectivity loss. So it'll apply it, and if after 90 seconds you don't get reconnected to the LUCI interface, it will revert those changes and you'll be able to get back in right then and try again. This last one is apply and keep the settings. So if you think it's going to take you a little time to go in there and set up your system, so if you've got a static address set, you need to move your cable potentially, and then open up your network settings and change your static address and your gateway setting to be a .10 address in my case. So instead of .1, I need to make it .10. So instead of 192.168.1, I need to change it to be 192.168.10. So it's up to you which button you apply. If you don't think this will give you enough time to do everything, you can click this one. But if you're worried, like, hey, I'm going to lock myself out if I click this and I did something wrong, you can click this one and it'll revert itself after 90 seconds. So it's kind of up to you. I'm going to go the dangerous way and click this one right here. And it's going to start doing the changes. I'm going to very quickly switch this cable down to my ETH1 port. So I've done that. I'm going to go over and check my actual connectivity here. And I see it, and it has pulled an address already, which is great. It's starting to try and pull that address, so that's good. It sees the DNS settings. Alright, and I've got an address. So now I need to change my IP address that I'm accessing the interface on. So I'm going to go to 192.168.10.1. And here's my LUCI interface. So I'm just going to log back in. So just remember, when you change these things, you change the interface that you access your LUCI on, You need to make sure that your device gets a new IP address, everything like that. But hopefully if you followed along with me, you should be okay. You should be getting back into your system by now. I'm going to just tell this not to remember, and I'm going to zoom this back up for you guys. So we're moving right along here, which is great. All right, so I'm going to go back into network and interfaces real quick and talk about a couple of things. So we've set up these different interfaces. So right now you can see that I've got these different interfaces. I've got the WAN interface, and I want this. My WAN interface is what's going to give me access to the internet when I connect everything up. So right now, if I try to go to Google, it's not going to work because it doesn't have access to the internet because I don't have a network cable connected to it. But if I connect the network cable to the WAN interface, it's going to throw things off because I've got a 192.168.10 address, so it's going to give that to the WAN, and it's going to be giving that to my actual system. So it works, but it's not the best thing to have that hooked up right now because I don't want everything to be having a conflict, which it will with both of them being on the .10. Now I should be able to move my cable that's in the back of my system from the number 1 Ethernet port to the ETH2 port, and if I wait just a second, I should get a new address in the .20 range, and I do. So I'm going to show this to you. Here it is. It's .20.1 is the system, and it's waiting to get my IP address. It's not there yet, but it should be getting one here. Oh yeah, it does. It's got it. 20.35 is the IP address that it gave me. So there we go. Now I'm going to go and I'm just going to close that, and let's go open it up and let's go to a different page, yahoo.com. So yeah, we got to yahoo.com. Everything seems to be working. I'm still going through my .20 VLAN, so my media VLAN is functioning as we expect. Now I could do one more test. I can close that, and then I'll bring the network stuff back up. I know that's hard to see. I'll try to remember to zoom this up during the video. But I'll unplug it from 2. So I'm going to plug this into port 3 instead of Ethernet port 2. I'm going to move it to Ethernet port 3, and this should give us a .30 address. So I'm going to click it in. You see that it went away after a couple of seconds. So now it should be saying, hey, I'm a new machine. Give me an address in your DHCP pool, and it did. And there's our 3035, and we've got 30.1. And over here you can see that things go away in the background because I'm looking at the .10 network, and then it comes back. So it kind of refreshes itself, which is great. So here I'm going to try to go to a web page. Let's go to GitLab. I should be able to reach my GitLab stuff if I've still got internet access, which I should. It might just take a second for the DNS and caching stuff to work its way around, but we'll give it just a second. And there we go. We've got GitLab coming up on the screen, which is great. So our .30 is also working. So I'm going to move everything back to the .10 real quick. I'm going to unplug my WAN, and I'm going to plug back in my .10 LAN. And so we've got everything running. So everything's working. We've got VLAN stuff going on. We haven't separated our firewall, but we'll get there. If your goal is to just get VLANs running on different ports on your main router, and that's all you have in your house, then you're done. You're set other than the firewall, and we'll get to that. Now, if you want Wi-Fi, we need to go to the next step because I don't have any Wi-Fi on this machine. So I'm going to set up an access point, or actually several access points, to be able to connect to this machine. So we're going to go through the same steps to get the access point set up. We're going to start off with just a plain out-of-the-box OpenWRT router, and we're going to go through and set it up just like we did this one just now. We're going to get the VLANs defined, and then we're going to set up some trunk ports, and I'll kind of show you what that looks like. It's your open source advocate, and I'm back, and I've set up a store with a little bit of merchandise. I love being your open source advocate, but I want you guys to be the open source advocates with me. So if you want to, get out there and get some of this stuff. And if you do, let me know what you think of it. Thank you for subscribing.